Imagine walking down a corridor where every door is locked, and the only light comes from a flickering bulb at the very end. You feel like you know what's behind those doors because you've heard the whispers, the rumors, and the warnings since you were a child. But have you ever stopped to wonder if the whispers were designed to keep you from opening the door, or if they were actually trying to protect you from something that doesn't want to be found? Today, we are stepping into that corridor. We are going to talk about the things that exist in the shadows of our reality, those entities and forces that we've labeled with names like jinn, or demons, or spirits, but which represent something far deeper about the fabric of our universe and the limits of our own perception. You know, it's strange. We live in an age of satellites and microscopes. We think we've mapped out the entire world. We believe that if we can't measure it with a sensor or capture it on a high-speed camera, it simply doesn't exist. But then, there's that feeling. You've felt it. That sudden chill in a room that should be warm. That sensation of being watched when you are completely alone in your house at 3 a.m. Your logical brain tells you it's just the wind or the house settling, but your soul? Your soul is screaming that there is something else there. Maybe, just maybe, our ancestors weren't as primitive as we like to think. Maybe they weren't making up stories to explain the unknown. Maybe they were documenting a reality that we have simply forgotten how to see. Think about the concept of the jinn for a moment. In various cultures, they aren't just monsters under the bed. They are described as a parallel civilization, beings made of smokeless fire or pure energy. Now, if you take away the ancient terminology and look at it through the lens of modern physics, what are we talking about? We're talking about entities that exist in a frequency or a dimension that overlaps with ours, but remains invisible to our biological eyes. It's like two different radio stations broadcasting on the same airwaves. Just because you're tuned into FM 101 doesn't mean FM 105 isn't currently playing music. You just need the right receiver to hear it. And sometimes, for reasons we don't fully understand, the frequencies bleed into each other. There's a specific kind of fear that comes with this realization. It's not the fear of being jumped in an alleyway. It's the existential dread of realizing you are not the master of your own domain. We like to think humans are at the top of the food chain, the ultimate observers of the universe. But what if we are just tenants in a building owned by someone else? What if the shadow people, or the unseen, are the original inhabitants, and we are the ones intruding on their space? It makes you look at your own bedroom differently, doesn't it? That corner you never quite like looking at when the lights are low. Perhaps your intuition is picking up on a presence that your eyes are too evolved to filter out. Let's look at this from a psychological perspective. Why is it that across every single continent, regardless of religion or isolation, every human culture has a version of the unseen? From the hidden folk in Iceland to the Mogwai in ancient folklore, the descriptions share terrifying similarities. If this were all just a hallucination, why is the hallucination so consistent? Why does a person in a remote village in the mountains describe the same heavy chest sensation and the same dark silhouette as a businessman in a Manhattan skyscraper? It suggests that this isn't just a glitch in our brains. It suggests a shared encounter with a very real, very ancient phenomenon. Shayad. Maybe we are the ones who are limited. We see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can't see ultraviolet light. We can't see infrared. We can't see Wi-Fi signals or cellular waves, yet we know they are there because we've built tools to detect them. We are literally blind to 99% of what is happening around us at any given second. So, is it really such a leap to believe that there are sentient forms of energy, beings with their own wills, their own societies, and their own agendas, moving through the very air we breathe? I remember a story I heard once, and it has stayed with me for years. It wasn't a horror story, not exactly. It was about a man who moved into an old house in a rural area. He wasn't a believer in the supernatural. He was a man of science. But every night at exactly 2:14 a.m., his kitchen tap would turn on. Not a drip, but a full, steady stream. He replaced the plumbing, he checked the pressure, he even set up cameras. The cameras showed the handle turning by itself. There was no one there. No ghost, no monster. Just the physical manifestation of a will that wasn't his. He didn't feel threatened. He felt irrelevant, like he was a ghost in someone else's timeline. That's the real mystery. It's not always about malevolence. Sometimes it's just about coexistence. But then, there are the darker accounts. The stories of possession, of seer, of dark energy being channeled to cause harm. We try to rationalize these things as mental illness, and in many cases, science is right to do so. But there is a remaining percentage, a small, terrifying margin of cases, where medicine fails, where logic breaks, and where the symptoms defy every known law of biology. How do you explain a person speaking a language they've never heard? How do you explain objects moving in a room without any seismic activity? Some people believe that these entities feed on our fear. That fear is a form of low-frequency energy that acts like a meal for things that live in the dark. If that's true, then our modern world, filled with anxiety, stress, and constant digital noise, is a literal banquet for them. Minute. Think about that. If fear is their fuel, then the more we ignore the spiritual side of our existence, the more vulnerable we become. By dismissing the unseen as mere superstition, we strip away our own defenses. Our ancestors had rituals. They had protections. They had a deep respect for the boundaries between worlds. We, in our arrogance, have torn down those boundaries. We go into places we shouldn't. We play with things we don't understand, and we wonder why the vibes of our world feel so heavy lately. You might be wondering, why now? Why does it feel like these stories are becoming more common? Perhaps it's because the veil is thinning. As we push further into the digital age, as we surround ourselves with more and more artificial frequencies, we might be inadvertently tearing holes in the fabric that separates us from the other side. Some people say that the aliens people claim to see today are just the jinn of the past wearing a different mask to fit our modern expectations. They adapt. They evolve in our perception, but their essence remains the same, the others. Let's dive into the psychology of the void. When you stare into a dark room, your brain tries to create patterns out of nothing. This is called pareidolia. Skeptics use this to explain away every sighting. But what if pareidolia isn't a mistake? What if it's a survival mechanism? What if our brains are hardwired to recognize these entities, and imagining a face in the shadows is actually our subconscious detecting a pattern of energy that the conscious mind isn't ready to accept? It's a chilling thought that our imagination might be the most honest part of our perception. Riwayat ke mutabik, these beings have been here long before us. They watched us evolve. They watched us build empires and burn them down. Imagine the perspective of something that lives for 1,000 years. To them, we're like mayflies. We appear, we buzz around for a brief moment, and we vanish. Why would they care about us? Unless we have something they don't, a physical form, a soul that connects to a higher source. There is a theory that they envy us, and envy, as we know, is a dangerous thing. It leads to interference. It leads to those small, subtle nudges in our minds that we mistake for our own thoughts. Have you ever had a thought so dark, so out of character, that you wondered where it came from? I would never think that, you tell yourself. Maybe you didn't. This brings us to the concept of the Quorine, the idea that every human has a companion from the unseen world assigned to them. A shadow self. This isn't just a religious concept. It's a profound psychological metaphor. We all have a darkness within us, a side of ourselves we don't want to show the world. But what if that darkness isn't just a part of your personality? What if it's a separate entity that knows your every weakness, your every secret, and spends its entire existence trying to tilt you off balance? It changes the way you think about self-control. It makes the battle with oneself a literal struggle between two different types of existence. We live in a world that is increasingly cold and calculated. We want answers, we want proof, but the unseen doesn't work on the terms of a laboratory. It works on the terms of the heart and the spirit. You can't summon a mystery to a witness stand. You can only experience it. And once you do, your life is never quite the same. You start to see the glitches. You notice the way a shadow moves against the light. You realize that the silence of the night isn't actually silent. It's vibrating with the footsteps of things we cannot see. So, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. Have you ever felt a presence in your room that was so strong you were afraid to open your eyes? Did you feel that if you looked, you would see something that would change your understanding of reality forever? And more importantly, why didn't you look? Was it because you didn't believe? Or was it because deep down you knew exactly what was standing there? Maybe the true protection isn't a prayer or a ritual. Maybe the true protection is our own denial. Our brains protect us by filtering out the horrors that surround us. If we could see everything that is currently in the room with us, the spirits, the energy trails, the entities drifting through the walls, we would go insane within seconds. Our sanity is just a blindfold, and sometimes the blindfold slips. As we move forward into an uncertain future, perhaps it's time to stop looking for answers in our screens and start looking for them in the spaces between. The world is much larger, much older, and much weirder than we are taught in school. We are not alone. We have never been alone. We are just the only ones who seem to have forgotten the neighbors. Take a breath. Look around the room you're in right now. Really look. Notice the shadows. Notice the stillness. Does the air feel a bit heavier now that we've spoken about these things? That's not a coincidence. Attention is a form of energy. By thinking about them, by talking about them, you are essentially tuning your radio to their frequency. You are calling out into the dark. And the thing about the dark is, it always listens. Before we end this journey, think about this. If you could choose to see them, to see the truth of the unseen world with perfect clarity, would you? Or would you rather stay in the comfort of your logical world, pretending that the bumps in the night are just the wind? It's a choice between a comfortable lie and a terrifying truth. Most people choose the lie. But you're still here, listening. Maybe you've already seen too much to go back. Stay curious, stay grounded, but most importantly, keep your lights on. Because the world is deep, the night is long, and there are things out there that don't need an invitation to watch you while you sleep. Until next time, keep questioning the reality you think you know. Because the moment you think you have it all figured out is the moment the unseen decides to remind you just how little you actually see.